About 1,000 people move to Houston each day, and if you're one of those people that are on the fence about whether or not you should move to the greater Houston area, then in this video I'm gonna give you all the reasons why you shouldn't, and maybe you should reconsider your decision about moving here to Houston. If this is your first time here, hi, my name is Aaron, and every week I'm helping buyers relocate to and throughout the greater city of Houston and the surrounding suburbs. So if you need to know anything about where to eat, sleep, live, play, hit me up morning, noon, or night. I'm your guy. If this isn't your first time here, welcome back. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the comment section. Tell me where you're watching this video from. It really encourages me to keep making content just like this for you. So sit back and relax, and let's get right back into it. So a large portion of the people that actually reach out to me are people from other cities, from other states that are looking to make Houston home. Houston is one of those places where I love it, and it can often look like a grass is greener kind of city and place, but there are some things that you have to know about Houston before you decide to make that permanent decision to make it home. And the first reason why I say that Houston isn't for everyone is because Houston is super crowded. Houston is a top 5 city in the US when it comes to population. So there's always something that is going on, and it's very, very crowded. And once you are, unpacking where you're gonna live, where you're gonna work, where you're gonna play, traffic is going to be awful. There's always going to be road closures. There's always going to be some kind of construction. There's always something going on because Houston is very crowded. There's a stat that I recently read that 1,000 people move here a day. 1,000 people move here a day, right? And not that many people are leaving. We have over 2 million people that are in the greater city of Houston alone, and that doesn't include any of the suburbs that are on the outskirts of the greater Houston area. And so if you're looking for somewhere that is a little bit more remote, a little bit more quiet, a little bit less dense, then Houston is definitely not the place for you. Now, in my experiences, I've been to a couple places in the Northeast, up in like the New York sort of area, and it doesn't feel as congested as that, but it's not very far off. And because we don't have a great public transportation system, you're gonna need a car and you're gonna be in traffic, and there's a lot of places where Houston can be an hour away from Houston. And so it is definitely very crowded, somewhere that I don't want you to assume that you're gonna come here from a bigger city and assume it's gonna be much better, because Houston is just it's a country big city. There's so much, like I said, going on all the time, and that people that are coming from like in LA or New York or places that are slightly bigger and more dense than here assume that it's gonna be much better, but there's a trade-off with the public transportation system to where you're gonna need a car and you're gonna be in traffic. The second reason why you shouldn't move to Houston is because we don't have zoning in Houston proper. If you are not in a super deed restricted area, you are gonna be up against mixed use kind of real estate. And what does that mean? That means that you could have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 house, and you can be right next door to an old tire shop that used to be in that area. And that sort of thing happens all the time, basically anywhere kind of hovering or inside the loop of anywhere that isn't super deed restricted. And so oftentimes people are coming from areas that are a little bit more suburban, and they're moving to the Houston area for an opportunity, and you're showing them the options and you're showing them the homes that they can afford in their price range, and they're looking out and they're seeing a pawn shop, or they're looking out and they're seeing a gas station right next door. And that sort of thing just happens all the time when you are moving from a place that is a little bit more suburban, a little less dense, and you are moving to a place like Houston where real estate and land is a premium. The third reason that you shouldn't move here is that affordability is kind of becoming out of reach for most people. I would say a good baseline salary that you need to really live here and not basically feel check to check is basically about $70,000 here in the greater Houston metro right now. And that's based on renting, that's based on buying, that's based on all factors of just being here and being in the city and being somewhat comfortable. You have to basically make like $70,000 or you are going to be check to check. And that's not including if you have other debts like car payment. That doesn't include if you have student loans. That doesn't include a lot of things. For people that are reaching out to me all the time that are trying to make a move here for an opportunity, and they are, they have a good job that they've been offered here, but it's under $70,000, you're going to see that you're going to probably struggle in many places that are desirable, in areas that are places that you would actually want to be. On the apartment side, a nice luxury apartment can be like $1,700, and you have to show 3 times that monthly rate and income to be able to qualify for that home, which would basically put you at like that $65,000 to $70,000 range just for an apartment here. The same thing would be true with a rental house or a rental townhome or condo out here. They're basically going to want to see that 3 to 5 times, depending on the property, of your income versus what your monthly rent would be to qualify you for that rent. At the same token, to buy a decent home here in the greater Houston metro, you're going to need to be in that like $60,000 to $70,000 range as well to get an entry-level home somewhere around that $225,000 to $275,000 price point. And affordability has changed a lot since we moved here. When we moved here, we were able to get a brand new apartment, 2-bedroom, almost 1,500 square feet, and we were paying like $1,350 a month for that apartment out in the energy corridor. That same apartment just 8 years later is like $2,100 now. Same thing when it comes to buying a home now. When you were looking at some of these townhomes in some of these up and coming areas like Edo or in the Shady Acres or in some parts of the Heights that were once like $300,000 or $400,000 now are somewhere in that $500,000, $600,000 or $700,000 range. So affordability in this greater Houston metro has changed a lot over the last few years, and because we have so many people that are moving here on a daily basis, it doesn't look like there's going to be any relaxation of that price increase in the rental side or owning. The fourth reason why you shouldn't move here is that crime stats here are outrageous. I once read a stat basically that was like any crime that you can think of, Houston is basically like top 5 or top 10 in pretty much any stat that you can think of, whether it comes to drugs, trafficking, human trafficking, violent crimes, assault, anything that you can think of. Houston is one of the top 10 cities for that in the US. And so I often get people that are reaching out to me saying that they want to move somewhere in Houston that's kind of nice and quiet and that's going to be super safe and doesn't have any of these issues, but nowhere in Houston is completely safe, because if you don't have the violent crimes, you're going to have the theft. If you don't have the theft, you're going to have the robbery. If you don't have the robberies, you're going to have the break-ins. You're going to just have something that is going on, because Houston, by the stats and by the data, is just one of the most dangerous places you can live in the greater US. So to show you what I mean, we're on neighborhoodscout.com, and I just want to paint the picture that Houston is a great place, but Houston can be incredibly dangerous. And this is an overall United States crime stat, and this is what Houston is. And as you can see, for every category, Houston is almost double in every category. Now, I don't want to get this video stricken down or anything by saying some of these words, but if you can read that, we're double. If you can read that one, we're almost double. If you're looking at robbery, we're definitely more than double on robbery. If we're looking at assault, we're definitely more than double the assault numbers, and that's just for violent crimes in the greater Houston metro. If we're looking at crimes against property, so even if you're in a nice neighborhood and you don't have necessarily the threat of the violent crimes that you're going to have, there's still a potential that your home or your car can be vandalized, can be taken, can be stolen at any time here in the greater Houston metro. Just by the numbers, look at this. So from a burglary standpoint of someone potentially breaking into your home, the US is at 3.1 per thousand. Houston is at almost 7 per thousand people. If you're looking at just overall thefts, taking something out of your yard, taking something out of your property, but not necessarily breaking into your home, the US is at 13.9. Houston is at almost 30. If we're looking at vehicle theft, the US is at 2.45. Houston is at almost 7. So as you can see, from no matter what the stat is, Houston is just going to be bad compared to most places in the US. And so whenever somebody reaches out to me and they're saying they want to move to Houston, they want to go somewhere safe, and they want to have somewhere that they can feel like they can walk their family and just feel kind of like at ease at all places, there are some pockets that can give you that sort of a lifestyle, but I never want to sugarcoat it and say that Houston is a super safe place to be. We personally live in the Independence Heights area that is a kind of an up and coming transitioning neighborhood, and it's attached, our Ring app is attached to one of the most desirable areas in the Houston metro, which is the Heights. And the amount of break-ins and car break-ins and house break-ins and pots stolen off of yards, and my bike was stolen, the amount of petty theft crimes and aggressive theft crimes and robberies and break-ins that occur in the Heights, which is seen as a more desirable area, is crazy to me, considering that to be in that area in Heights proper, you're going to be paying $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 at least to get in that area, and just to be tied to their Ring app and see the amount of things that go on in a better area is crazy to see. And that kind of thing happens throughout the greater Houston metro, no matter where you are. The fifth reason why I tell people not to move here is because of politics. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you which way to vote, which way to be, what's right, what's wrong. But what I can tell you is that Texas is an extremely conservative state. Houston leans very liberal. So between Texas at large, which is super red, super conservative, and Houston, which is super liberal, super blue, there is a constant clash that is going on between Houston and Texas at large. And because Texas is overall conservative compared to what Houston is, there are a lot of laws and legislation passed down towards us here in Houston that would not necessarily agree with your ideology if you were, for example, trans, if you, for example, were gay, if you were, for example, a woman. There are just things that occur here in Texas, and with Houston being a part of Texas, that you just have to deal with. And I can't tell you the amount of people that have reached out to me that were young women from other states or other cities saying, hey, I want to move to the greater Houston area, but I don't know what's going on with for example, the pro-choice bans going on down there. I don't know, right? That sort of thing is something that you have to think about. And depending on where you are in life and kind of what your goals are and what your thoughts are on the issue, Houston may not just be a great place for you because we're still a part of Texas. And so if you're coming from somewhere that's super liberal and super leaning towards being a little bit more progressive thinking, and you're coming here, that's going to be a culture shock when you start to see some of the rhetoric coming from our government officials here in Texas. The sixth reason why you should move here is because of flooding. Now, I'm not going to sit here and gaslight you and let you think that every time it rains here that it's going to flood and that you're going to lose your house or lose your car or anything like that. It's not the case. More times than not, you're not going to have that big of an inconvenience outside of street flooding, right? But Houston as a whole is not meant to maintain and deal with longer than about 30 or 45 minutes of very hard rain. If you have more than that pretty much anywhere in the city, you're going to have some level of inconvenience in the form of street flooding. Also, secretly, Houston is cut through by this very large creek that goes basically from the far west side or the far east side of Houston, and that is known as the Buffalo Bayou. A lot of little creeks and streams kind of flow off of that, but cutting through basically the middle part of the city is the Buffalo Bayou, and along that there are a lot of desirable neighborhoods that kind of touch that, and so they are often at higher risk of flooding in the event something like a Harvey or anything crazy like that were to happen. Those areas are definitely more at risk. It rains like 150 to 200 days a year here, and so the potential of it flooding is just going to be higher than it is in most places. So I get hit up all the time and they're like, what did it do during Harvey? What did it do during the tax day flood? All these other flood events that have occurred here in Houston. And it really is a case by case, house by house, street by street basis. I know that I had listings during basically every flood that has occurred, and luckily my houses that were listed never had flood damage or flood water come into the actual property, where some of the neighbors on the same street that maybe would have been a little bit closer or had a little bit shorter driveway, they did have some damage. And so it really is a street by street, neighborhood by neighborhood block. You can't make an assumption that anywhere is safe in Houston, considering that it rains like a third of the time here. And as you go out to our suburbs, even if you're trying to avoid the city, our suburbs are probably a little bit worse off because we have Lake Houston to the north, we have Lake Conroe, we have so many lakes that just kind of surround, and we have the Brazos River down south that kind of cut through and run around the entire city and the greater suburb areas. So there's really not many places that are exempt from the potential of having some kind of a flood risk at any time here in Houston. Even in an X zone here that we live in the greater Houston metro in the Independence Heights area, we don't have any water pretty much anywhere near us. But every time it rains here for like 45 to an hour, all of our little drainage ditches, all of our little streets around here are pretty much flooded. And in my low profile car, I typically just wait it out until the water subsides, just because there is that street flood risk. There's so much development kind of going on. We have basically created a concrete bowl all around Houston and the surrounding suburbs with all the development that we've done that it's kind of hard to avoid flooding in any way. And the seventh reason why I don't think you should move to Houston is because property taxes here are outrageous. Now, we do not have state income taxes, and so that is kind of one of the metrics and one of the analysis that I do for a lot of my clients that are moving here, that are moving from places where they have state income taxes. So like your California, for example, that has a pretty beefy state income tax. You would almost always do better to move here and make your same salary than you would in California when you're looking and comparing the property taxes that you would pay here for a similar size home in California. But on the low end here, we're still going to be in that like 2 to 2.3% tax rate. And I know I've seen some of my friends that live in New York, and I've seen some of my friends that live in California in some nice areas, and their tax rates are like 1.1, 1.3. And so that's a huge jump. So a $500,000 house in any of those places would not be the same and cost the same from a mortgage standpoint if you were to buy a $500,000 house here in the greater Houston metro. And don't even get me started on if you go to some of our brand new suburbs where the tax rate can be as high as almost 4%. So on a $400,000 or $500,000 house at almost 4%, you can already see how much you're going to be paying in tax. It's definitely going to be over $1,000 a month just for taxes. You're going to have that for the life of that loan. The taxes never go away here unless you are like a disabled vet, and they get super low when you get over 65. But for the most part, that's a bill that you're going to have every year, and it's only going to continue to go up as values go up in the city. And so before you make that jump, you definitely are going to want to do the analysis, and we're going to sit down and say, is this going to be an actual good fit for you financially to buy a home here? Because property taxes are not for the weak in the greater Houston metro. And so those are the top 7 reasons why I tell people not to move to Houston. Don't get me wrong, I love Houston. I think it's an outstanding place to be. But these reasons alone are some of the reasons why you really want to just push pause and see if Houston is actually the grass is greener place that you think it is, and the place that you want to call home over the next foreseeable few years. But you want to think long and hard before you make that jump from wherever you are to the city of Houston, because it's not for the faint of heart. How did I do? Hopefully I didn't scare you away. If you are still interested in Houston, I would love to be a resource. All of my info is going to be on the screen or in the description. YouTube thinks that you should check this video out next, so after this one, go ahead and do that. I look forward to hearing from you, and I hope you have an amazing day.